Hi guys, today we're talking about the first inhabitants, the first populations who settled in Britain. Let's start with this timetable that helps you understand the chronology of the different populations that settled in the country, that occupied the country, starting from the Celts to the Normans. Let's start with the Celts, that is the population you have already probably heard about. They were tall and muscular, they had the fair skin and the hair, and they had blue eyes. Something interesting is that women among the Celts had an important role. They had almost the same importance as men, and in fact women could even lead men in battle. And this is the example of Boadicea, that was the widow or of leader of the Celts that was killed in war, and so Boadicea replaced her husband as a leader of the Celts men who fought against the Roman invasion. Also interesting is the building of hill forts that were sort of fortini on top of hills that was surrounded by ditches filled with water, and that to be defended from invaders. The economy of the Celts was based on being that is the Celts were farmers, hunters, and fishermen, and they also worked iron. They invented the plug, the iron plug, that was very useful to make the cultivation of lands easier. And they divided the field into long and narrow strips that still can be seen in some English lands. But particularly fascinating the Celts were for their religion and for their priests called the Druids. They worshipped natural elements that were the sun, the moon, the trees and rivers. The Druids were their priests, and they not only took care of the religion, but they also educated children and were experts in medicine. They also administered the justice. They held their religious rites in the woods and not in temples, because the Celts considered nature as a holy place. They believed in water, that was considered a holy element, because it was on one side the source of life and on the other the door to the world after death, the next world, the world of the dead. And they also believed in immortality and the transmigration of the soul from one person to another. Life after death, they believed, was spent in caves, hills or lakes. That is why nature was a holy place. The Romans, so after the Celts, the first population tried to occupy the country were the Romans. But why did the Romans invade Britain? They were attracted by rich agriculture of the south, by tin and lead that they found in the west of England. Tin lo stagno e lead il piombo. They also were interested in the possibility to get slaves, and also because of Britain's strategic position as an offshore base. And what did they bring to Britain? As usual, as they did in all the countries that they occupied in their huge empire, they built paved roads, cioè delle strade lastricate con lastre di pietra, to move troops and goods. So they made easier the moving of troops and of goods. And also they built some towns that became administrative and trading centers, and that got mainly their name from the castra, that is, these towns were born, all of them were born as castra, that in Latin means, that in Italian that is a Latin word for accampamenti. And this is explained by the fact that many cities, many towns of Roman origin, even nowadays, end by Castor, such as Lancaster, Chester, such as Manchester, and Cester, such as Gloucester. But the first city that they built was Londinium, that was built around the lowest bridgeable point on the river Thames. The Romans brought Latin and Christianity with them, and but they were forced. Also, an interesting thing is that they built Hadrian's Wall in 122 Anno Domini, that is after the birth of Christ, because it was impossible for them to spread their occupation to the north, but at the same time they were threatened, minacciati in continuazione by the Scots, and so they built this wall, and some stretches of this wall are still present today, can still be seen nowadays. The Romans had to withdraw the country in 409 to defend Rome against the barbarian raiders, and it was after the Romans, the Angles, the Saxon, and the Jutes coming from the North Sea regions of northern Europe, occupied the country. They settled south of Hadrian's Wall. They were farmers, and they were interested in, they were looking for farming lands. They were organized, the society was organized in family groups or clans, and the loyalty to family was the main value for them. The center of communal life was the hall, that was the place where families, people met to swear their loyalty to their clan. And in this period, the country kept the form of an heptarchy, that is a country formed of 7 reigns, that you can see in this picture: Northumbria in the north, Mercia in the center, East Anglia, Essex and Kent in the east, and Sussex and Wessex in the south. Wessex became the most important among these reigns, and was also the one that managed to resist longer to the following invaders. In 597, Pope Gregory I sent a Bishop Augustine to bring Christianity back to England, Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury. That was the most important, that was and still is the most important role in the British Church. And the monastery became, as in all the other Christian countries, a very important cultural center. And the Lindisfarne, the monastery of Lindisfarne, was founded in 635, where the monks produced the illuminated manuscripts, that is, Vangeli Miniati, ovvero Vangeli con decorazioni, as you can see in the picture. After the Anglo-Saxon, a new population tried to occupy the country and managed to occupy the western and the eastern and northern part of the country, and they were called Vikings or Danes. Differently from the Anglo-Saxons that were mainly farmers, they were sea people, and they traveled on their long ships. In 793 they attacked the monastery of Lindisfarne, and by the 9th century they occupied England. They established the Dane law, a name with which we can refer to both to the Danish laws or also to the territory administered in northern and eastern England. And their language blended with that of the local population, some places ending by Thorp, by, and the Kirk have Danish origin. Alfred the Great is called like this because he had a very important role in Wessex, his own reign. First of all, he managed to stop the invasion of the Vikings in Wessex, and in 878, in the famous Battle of Edington, he defeated the Danish commander Guthrum. He also reorganized the army of Wessex, planned a navy with longships, established the capital Wessex in Winchester, and had some Latin texts translated into Anglo-Saxon, and also commissioned a history of England that was called the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. The last Anglo-Saxon king was Harold, that managed to defeat again the Vikings, and so to stop the invasion of Wessex, his own reign. But immediately after, he had to fight against the Normans, against William of Normandy, that tried to conquer the country, that invaded England in 1066 and managed to defeat King Harold at the famous Battle of Hastings. William was crowned king in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day, and sent his men all over England to carry out a survey, un censimento, of the land, called the Domesday Book. This was very important to understand all the richness of the country and all that every individual in his reign possessed. But what is more important about the reign of the occupation of the Normans was the fact that the feudal system that was already established on the continent was introduced in England, and it was based on the social pyramid. On the top of the pyramid was the king, then there were the nobles and the barons that were the king's tenants and could sublet the land to the knights, subaffittare. The knights gave the barons services, including military service, and the peasants gave the tenants their labor in return for food and security, and this system guaranteed security and food, peace and prosperity for everyone. That's all for today. Bye.